Hey everyone, this is Kevin from OverAI, and today we're going to learn how to make a data visualization in OverAI that answers key business questions for you. You may be familiar with this term in the industry as a BI tool, a business intelligence tool. I think the nature of LLM focused app building means that these traditional tool boundaries break down. So I would call this our version of a BI tool, but it's very open ended. You'll see how it can easily cross boundaries into other software categories as well. And in order to make a relatable example, I found this open data set. It's called the productivity of garment employees. This is an actual garment factory. I'm not sure where it is in the world, but you can see that there is down here, there is day by day data of the productivity of the plant for each day. We have some other interesting metadata to dig into. I am by no means an expert on garment manufacturing, so I certainly will not be bringing a brilliant targeted analysis to the table here at first, but we'll see how the architect can help us plan that out. So yeah, to quickly set up this project, this is an online kind of competition platform called Kaggle. You can just download the data set. So I downloaded the data set here as a zip file. And so the first thing we'll do to get started is I'll head over to OverAI. I'm going to hit plan or build with the architect. And I'm going to say, I would like to first create some uh, some database table for this data set on garment manufacturing. So let's start there. I'm just uploading it locally from my desktop as a CSV file, the same one there, and I'll hit OK. And yeah, let's see how it does. Okay, we have information that it was successful. A few design notes. Yep, I don't think there's anything too important in here. And then it suggests the next step. Uh, okay, so it's assuming that in the future there will be more CSVs. That can be a bit of an unscalable architecture. Usually you prefer to have a integration with your system of record. In this case, would usually be ERP data. But we do not want to make an automation for more CSVs at the moment. It does not know that we want to build an app on top of this. So in our workspace overview, you can see now there's a single table space, and you can see the summary now is just based on this one table, which is not what we want to do. So let's continue on to the next step here. I know I have this data, and I'm interested in the productivity of my plant. And I don't know how that's traditionally done in the garment industry, actually. So I'm just going to ask the architect that. So can you suggest ways to analyze this data so I can learn more about the productivity? Okay, we got a nice long summary. I'm going to scroll up to the top here. Productivity gap analysis, are teams hitting their targets? That sounds interesting. Productivity by day of the week. Intuitively, I'm not sure what the day of the week would do to affect productivity, but we could try that one. Does paying incentives? This one I might need to ask about. What is the incentive here? Quantifies your return on incentive spend. Let's go back to the data set and see if they have any documentation on this. That enables or motivates a particular course of action. Okay, so that actually is a real piece of data in here. Overtime versus productivity. Yep, that one seems really valuable because I'm going to be paying extra for overtime. Um, Department comparison over time, quarter over quarter. hmm When time spikes. Okay, so as I read through this, I initially think number four is interesting, and then I think number one is interesting. Let's start with number one because it's a very understandable thing. So, and then the architect gives some ideas on what to build next. We've got a dashboard page. Yep, that's the first thing I'm thinking of, a web page, an AI agent, so that a viewer can ask, if they want to learn more about this data. I think that's a great idea. And then a printable report. I don't usually like to make printable reports. I usually try to keep things digital whenever possible. So I think we're going to focus on one and two. But before we do one, right, I want to give the architect a little more guidance on what to build. I don't want it to just start firing, create some big visualization, and then I say, I don't like that, and then tell it to start from scratch again. That's just going to be a waste of my time. So I'd rather give it some more guidance for number one on what sort of visualization to build, or maybe work with it to determine what visualization to build, plan for this. So one popular visualization library that the architect likes to use is called D3 or Observable. I have it up here, and you can see that D3 has a gallery of past examples, and it can do all sorts of things, right? It can do complex animations, mapping things on a global 3D view. And, we are probably looking for a more traditional visualization, something around bar charts or line charts. But the point is, this has some good ideas. So sometimes I like to just scan through this library to see if anything catches my eye, and then I can tell the architect, build something like this. But for now, let's just ask the architect for some ideas so we can brainstorm with it. So I'll go back here and I'll say, I am interested in answering question one. Okay. Okay. So the architect has returned with a few different suggestions for visualizations, and you can see it provides some previews here, which is great. Uh, Diverging bar chart. I'm not very familiar with this one. I think we might just try it. This one's maybe not. Scatter plot. This one I'm definitely familiar with. I think this is not using D3, so it's just a preview. I think a scatter plot will be interesting. And then, yes, a heat map. I would love this. In fact, I have an example that I'm thinking of, and a box plot. Yep, that is maybe not my favorite one. Um, let's just tell it, let's have it build two things to start. And I'm going to specifically prompt it so I'm going to prompt it to build visuals, not one, number two and number three. And specifically for number three, I'm going to tell it to build something similar to the GitHub visualization that I really like. This is a way to visualize when I've been writing code on publicly available projects. And I really like this, so I'm going to screenshot it with my Mac. And then I'm going to go back here and I'm going to say, I would like to build visuals to start there. And for three, style it similar to this GitHub All right, and you can see I pasted it in there with my just Command V on a Mac, and it pops up. So we know it worked. So it has finished building. I'm going to go back to view so that I don't have to look at the code because that's not the most productive thing. Let's see, what does it think it built? A scatter plot, chart two, a heat map, right? We asked for two charts and KPI cards. And then it says the button currently shows an empty state since no data is loaded yet. Import your CS. Yes. So it looks like it did not put the data in the CSV into the table. It just put well, let me check this. Okay, so it only built the structure of the CSV. It did not. Yes, let's, although this is a one-time. So we're just going to tell it that this is a sample data set. We don't plan on uploading CSVs all the time. So let's see if we need an automation at all. Yep. So you can see it says it already has the full CSV data. Now it understands there won't be future CSVs, so no need to build a full-blown automation. Okay, it is going to build an automation. Never mind. It's going to build an automation because it has 1,200 rows, which doesn't fit nicely in a SQL statement. So this will be a one-time use automation. Okay, so it seems to have completed. File upload triggered, run import. Look at the automation canvas. You see a run now button or a file upload button on the event node, the when file. Okay, let's see. Okay, I see. So I click the run button up here. We're going to upload the CSV from my desktop. It says automated automation started. Let's watch the run to see if it worked. Finished in 1 second. So I think we should be good. This is the current time. Verify the row count. So verify row count. Let's see how that works. All right, great. So it confirms we have 1,197 rows. That's what we were expecting. I'm going to go over here to the page. And, ooh, interesting. So we had a couple of basic issues. So you can see we're in a sort of viewing mode right now. This is not how a person actually using this would view it. So let's see if I can just shrink this to the smallest size. Okay, so now we have something of an analysis. Okay, this is a little overwhelming right now, and the responsiveness is not working quite right, but that's okay. In order to just avoid doing, although responsiveness is an important part of this, I'd like to make sure this visualization will work well on any screen size. So imagine this is an executive viewing this on their phone. If they're in the airport, we don't want to spend our time trying to figure out how to making these work on all screen sizes. So I think I'm just going to pursue a more vertical layout so that it works nicely. So can you There we go. We're going to tell it to try to build this in a way that we don't have to think about what happens when it's on an iPad versus a desktop, all that stuff. Okay, great. So it just rebuilt itself. I'm going to go view. And yes, we have the single column design, which is really nice that it'll work all the way down um, to smaller screen sizes. And this may be a thing we need to come back to. Um, so let me see if I actually understand what's going on here. We have two different departments. There's sewing versus finishing, or all. Uh, the best performer, this not a super useful metric because I don't know how to process this. That one team had a really good shift one time. These are not super useful, but we can come back to that. Um, this misspelling is actually from the data itself, so I may ask it to fix that on this visual because in the database we downloaded, it actually spelled it this way. Um, so what I learned from this chart is you can get a range of the target versus actual productivity. It doesn't go 0 to 100. It stays in this 80 to 35% range usually. And then we have our, okay, I knew this would come up. So this was an interesting data set in the sense that it uses the phrase quarter within the data set. I'll go back to it. But a quarter in this case actually means a quarter of the month. It does not mean a quarter of the year in the way it's traditionally defined. So I need to make sure the LLM understands that. And this happens in many data sets. There are things that are not immediately obvious to a human. Okay, so we're not gonna tell it what to do. We are just gonna tell it, make sure it understands the situation, and then we will move on from there. Yeah, it correctly notices that this is really more of a week because a quarter of a month is generally a week. All right, it returned and it correctly noticed that things were off because there is such thing as a quarter five because most months are longer than 28 days and it was not reflected before. It didn't understand that. So now let's see how we're doing. Okay, so we have sewing, finishing, team one, all the way. Interesting. I don't know why these are not. Oh, I see. It's T1. Okay, so we need to tell it to fix this, that it's starting kind of alphabetically as opposed to 1 through 12. So let's do that. I'll give it a screenshot so it understands. 1 through 12, not alphabetical. That's what's going on. Okay, so it correctly determined that it needs to sort it differently. Let's go down here. All right, great. So we have the finishing teams up here, and then the sewing teams. There's another thing that's out of order, which is sewing happens before finishing, but we'll deal with that later. That's not the biggest thing. Okay, so we can see, I really enjoy this chart compared to this one. So I'm going to focus on the, further development here. I'd love to build a drill down visualization of what is going on here, and I find something really interesting, which is that week 5, everyone seems to be performing really well. That's one of the biggest trends I can see. So I'm gonna say I don't know how to analyze that exactly. I'm gonna ask for some guidance. I'd like to down into the data from week 5. Why are teams performing so well? Can you suggest some visualization that might appear when I click into each team's data to analyze this? Okay, so similar to any traditional BI tool, we need to have a drill down functionality, and we need to define it in a way that's perfect for this use case. Um, and so we'll ask the LLM for some help here, because uh, I am by no means an expert on starting from scratch here. And then after that, we have a couple small follow-up features, but you can see the idea of how this gives you the flexibility to build your own visuals. All right, sewing teams had high incentives in week 5. Okay, so this is probably, targeting a monthly goal, which is, a familiar concept across many industries. Um, there was some variation incentive by team. Uh, the finishing department works differently than the sewing department. Um, and zero idle time. That one would probably require some real world connection. All right, so now we have a suggestion. What happens when I click a heat map cell? Yeah, I like this factor breakdown idea because I can at least visually process what's going on. We're not building a full-blown, statistics product here to figure this out. Ooh, spider chart. That sounds interesting, but might not be the most relevant. So let's see what it recommends for the user experience. Click a heat map cell. That's what we want. Shows a few different things. Yeah, why don't we just build all of it for now because there's no extra cost, and see what happens. It doesn't tell us if this is going to. Let's make sure it appears on the second chain. It should replace the. Okay, so let's see. What did it build? So first of all, it's commenting on how the URL will be updated to reflect the drill down. That's a very common pattern. Also an implementation detail, not the biggest deal. You need to add the ability to click into an individual thing in the heat map, and then the drill down view needs to be built from scratch. Looks good. Every heat map cell is clickable. So here's what we can expect. It has a breadcrumb header and then 3 sections. All right, let's try it. So let's go to the view, and I'm going to click on one of these. Oh, look at this. It added this little annotation thing. So I'm going to click this. And yeah, let's see what we have here. Um, we have shift by shift performance. Exceeded the target. What was different this week? No incentive, some overtime paid. Okay, so this is a great example of the next feature I want to build here, which is an AI agent for the viewer. So as a person is processing this data, they may not know or have an idea why certain things happened. So I'd love to add an agent to allow them to explore further. So let's see if we can do that. So can you data on the screen at the time? And I'm going to recommend a single line chat because these should not be the longest, most verbose questions that a person come up with. It should be a small question on the data on the page in a single line chat. Let's see how it does with this. Okay, it's returned a result here. Let me scroll to the top. Um, no agent exists yet, but it says the approach is to use LM chat directly. It's already on the page. Okay, so you can see one issue here, which is that we wanted to build an agent, someone that can, a digital representation that can provide real help, but it doesn't seem to have created one because it seems to think that the instructions are so simple that you don't really need an agent. You just need to ask an LLM a question. So this is something we want to fix. AI query view. Yep, you can see it right here. No surprises there. And then why don't I tell it more directly? Can you create an agent that is an expert in garment manufacturing so that I can give better answers to business questions? Let's see how it does with this. And we have to give permission for it to create an agent.